and injuring an additional 390 individuals. I want to emphasize that number again. 320 Americans were killed in this disaster. We as a nation will never be able to express our full gratitude to all those deceased and their families for their dedication, service, and sacrifice. In times of crisis, the true character of a nation is revealed through the courage and the resolve of its citizens. The collective response to World War II exemplifies the indomitable spirit of the American people, who in the face of unprovoked aggression stood united in defense of liberty. We often discuss World War II with the benefit of hindsight, viewing our victory as inevitable, as if the march of progress is indeed unavoidable. But our eventual victory was not inevitable, even with 13 months left in the war in the Pacific. There is nothing inevitable about the relentless valor of our people, the American people, shown repeatedly throughout times of crisis. Then, as now, the true strength of our Navy is not in our ships, our submarines, our aircraft, but our people and their spirit and dedication to our nation's ideals. Then, as now, every sailor serving at the Port Chicago Naval Magazine had chosen to serve. And the U.S. Navy had an obligation to keep them safe. Every sailor loading on ammunition on steamship E.A. Bryan, who gave their last measure of devotion, chose to raise their right hand and swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. As did every one of the 258 sailors who were then tried and convicted as criminals for refusing to work in those unsafe conditions. That horrific explosion was etched in the hearts of a nation already grappling with the horrors of war. Most of these fallen heroes were African American men, their sacrifice echoing unheard amidst the deafening silence of official reports. Sailors, traumatized by the blast and deeply troubled by the unsafe working conditions, refused to return to a literal death trap. They weren't rebelling. They were pleading for their very lives, the lives of their fellow sailors. Theirs was a desperate act of self-preservation, a refusal to be complicit in further destruction and bloodshed. Tragically, their stand was met with suspicion, hostility, and criminal charges. The subsequent general court-martial of 50 sailors for mutiny and summary court-martials of 208 others for disobeying orders labeled the 258 of them as criminals. These men who had sworn an oath to defend their nation were now ostracized, their voices drowned out by the roar of a system unwilling to acknowledge its very own failings. The 50 mutiny defendants were each sentenced to 15 years hard labor and suffered imprisonment until released in early 1946, long after the war was over. I often wonder what was going through their minds on Victory Day. Those convictions on court-martials in 1944 cast a long shadow. As noted by future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, there were many worrying issues with both the summary and the general courts-martial, including multiple violations of their constitutional right to due process.
You were just on television a few days ago. Did you know that exoneration had happened when they came and spoke to you?
Yes, the Navy reached out to me twice. An officer, Stephanie Reno Jenkins, presented me with the order of exoneration in person. I was delighted to receive it.
So you were already on notice that this was going to happen?
A couple days ago.
How long have you been waiting for this? All your life?
Yes, I knew that it should have been something that happened, and it hadn't happened, and so delighted to know it happened.
Yes, it's finished. and your father?
Cyril Oscar Shepherd. He's not a junior, but I refer to him as junior because he's named after his father, just accepting the one name. But he is the Cyril O. Shepherd.
And when did he pass away?
He passed away in 1988. So he lived, and it changed his life, but it's fine.
Thank goodness his family is to carry on. I want to thank you for sharing those thoughts with us. Appreciate it. So my first question, how do you feel about the exoneration of those 256 sailors who were court-martialed, and then the other 50 that were convicted?
Let me tell you, it's a bittersweet victory. I cried when I learned about it, but it's been a long time coming, and so the wrong has finally been righted. However, I'm exhilarated. I can't tell you. I've been crying every time I think about it.
What was that moment like? Did you ever know that this was coming, like on the 80th year of that day, that these men of valor and the men who who were serving their country?
We were always hopeful, and I'm a minister, so I always said, "With God, all things are possible." Although I didn't think it would happen this soon, I thought it might happen beyond my lifetime, and at least another generation. And so for it to happen now, it's like I was at a loss for words when I found out about it.
What was your uncle's name who was serving here?
His name was Irvin, Irvin, Irvin Lowry, and he survived the explosion. He was in the barracks when the explosion happened, and so he was thrown against the wall from the force of it. And he said they worked for 3 days picking up body parts, and he didn't really know that he had been injured, that when he laid down finally to go to sleep, he had some glass in his body.
It was glass in his back, right? Is that correct? He didn't know until he laid down how affected that he was.
Yeah, that's right. He said when it first happened, everybody jumped up, they checked on each other to see who was hurt or if everybody was okay. And then he ran over and got a truck from the recreation center because he worked in the recreation center. So he brought the truck over and they used it like an ambulance to take people to get some medical help. And they had to go off base because everything on the base was destroyed. So they didn't even have a medical center anymore.
After the explosion, did they ship him to Mare Island, or he stayed here mainly just cleaning up the debris?
I think they shipped everybody over there because they didn't have any place for them to sleep over here.
Okay.
But he wasn't one that they asked to go back to work because it wasn't his job to begin with.
That's my last question. Are you glad that you started the Friends of Port Chicago 25 years ago? Because this probably would not have happened without the work of all you people, making this national memorial.
I am so thrilled. See, we didn't just do the exoneration, though that was our number one thing all those years ago. This land we're on right this moment was not a national park at that time, but it is now because we've done a lot of advocating for it, and it became Obama signed it into being, and so there've been other things that we've done other than the exoneration, but our main stories have been to honor the men who died here, to honor the ones who were injured, to honor the ones who protested, our people who were found guilty of mutiny to have them exonerated. So yeah, I'm glad. And we've just been plugging along, with the struggle. But one of the things I'll say is that the men who worked here, the men that I met, were survivors of that explosion wanted people to know that they did their darndest to help win the war. That, you know, they were hoping that they would be treated better after the war, but they still wanted us to win the war.
That is a beautiful story, and I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts about that. I've been seeing a lot of documentaries with you in it, and it's just a pleasure to meet you here on this beautiful day for this beautiful occasion. Thank you.
Yeah, although I can give it some audio break.
Lynn, thank you so very much for the introduction. I was listening, Mr. Secretary, as you related the history. And I was thinking about another very famous person, as you mentioned, Thurgood Marshall, and the work that he did. I was thinking of Martin Luther King. And on the memorial in Washington is a quote that fits what we're here today to observe. The long arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. The long, long arc doesn't get there by itself. It gets to justice by individuals, by organizations who say, it cannot be, it must change. We've seen that today. So many of you here, the families who stood when introduced by the Secretary, the organizations that have been propelling this issue, all gave power to move that arc of justice to where we are today.
okay. These are any of these are free to.
A lot of our programs.
Not this one. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. Thank you so much. Great.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Sorry. What did you say?
Well, Visitor Center is not open, and it probably won't be for the. We're gonna have a joint Visitor Center with National Park Service and East Bay Beach. That is in the process of being planned. There is gonna be another location today you can go to after, and I think we'll have a table there as well. Yeah, for some. You're gonna have to ask someone with green pants. Yeah. I work at a different agency, so they would know more. Yeah. How'd you do that?
This is my girlfriend, Ben.
Our question is, can you see it in this spell?
I think I can.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'll tell you though, after the
So, ladies and gentlemen, as we talked about, we're a little bit pressed for time. We have about 10 minutes for questions. We're going to go counterclockwise. If we have enough time to do one more, we will. I'll probably just call the last question after that. I'm going to turn it over to Secretary of the Navy, Floral, for an opening comments. Thanks very much.
Well, good morning to all of you, and thank you to all your listeners and your viewers for being with us here today on this historic day. Today, we have corrected a historic wrong. We're very proud of that in the Department of the Navy, because these men who gave up so much in their death and in their sacrifice for those that survived the accident afterwards finally got true justice today. And it serves as an example of what our Department of the Navy is all about today, taking care of our people with dignity and respect and treating them as such. And it is the future of our Navy. And so their sacrifice has again once reminded us that we must always do what's right, regardless of circumstances, or how difficult it might have been in the past to do so. And I'm very proud of the decisions that were made here. I'm very proud that President Biden and Secretary Austin empowered me as the Secretary of the Navy to be able to exonerate them on Wednesday and to celebrate that exoneration here today, memorialize their memory. Yes, ma'am. As I stated in my speech, there were many legal inconsistencies that took place during the trial, after the trial, that actually gave us the legal basis by which to reach exoneration.
Now, you said reaching exoneration. Did you look at the actions of the officers or the JAGs or whatever attorneys, the prosecutors, their actions when they presented these men with these court-martials?
Sure. In reaching the decision to exonerate, we actually took a look at all the issues and all the actions of all the parties from the time before the explosion, through the explosion, after the explosion, and made an assessment of all the facts, and very objectively reached the conclusion that justice was not done to them in their defense. And it's because of the legal inconsistencies in their defense that we were able to not just have to pardon them, right, to exonerate them, which is what they truly deserve to be, is to be completely exonerated.
Well, Secretary Territorial, can you tell me why it took so long? 80 years ago in 3 days. Why it took so long?
I can't speak for the past and the actions of others in the past. I can speak to what this president has empowered me to do as Secretary of the Navy now, over the last year, in the full investigation. We started with a clean slate, basically looking at all the facts very objectively to reach the conclusions that we reached. I'm very proud of my general counsel and legal team who actually came up with the discovery of all the facts and also the authorities that I had as Secretary of the Navy to be able to exonerate and not just have to request a pardon from the President of the United States.
Sir, earlier you were emotional talking about the exoneration. Is this personal?
It's hard not to be emotional. You know, as Secretary of the Navy, I have responsibility for close to 1 million Marine sailors and civilians in the Department of the Navy. We have an obligation to protect them. You know, they swear an oath to the Constitution just like I did 7 times throughout my life. We swear an oath to the Constitution. The institution, the Navy, the military, our nation, has an obligation to protect these men and women who serve so courageously so. And that is also why this has so meaningful. And it sends a very powerful message to those who serve today that we will not tolerate the injustices that perhaps occurred in the past. And also serves, I think, as an example for the many young men and women around our country who perhaps are thinking about joining the military. It is a different military today than it was before, and it's because of the courageous actions of these men who set the example for us. And these advocates who all came out here from across the country, basically advocating over the past 80 years for their exoneration. It's a great day to celebrate for all of America. Absolutely, a wrong from the past has been righted, and that's our obligation to do so as leaders in this country.
Thank you so much.
What's next? Sure. So now all their records will go to the Board of Correction of Naval Records, and they'll have their discharges upgraded basically to a full honorable discharge, and then there'll be an evaluation done also by the Department of Veterans Affairs to see if there are any benefits that need to be completely reconstituted for these sailors as well too. We will also, and I pledge, actually I ask, that all of you amplify the message so that we can try to get to as many family members that may be out there who we have not been able to reach, to let them know what's occurred here so that we can actually present them with their exoneration orders, which we've signed. We've already began delivering some of those exoneration orders. We've had officers visited their homes, and in one case, the family didn't even know that the father had gone through this experience because many of them didn't want to talk about it to their families, right? So it's an amazing story. We need to get every family member across the nation that we can reach, and you can help us reach all of them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary Territorial.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. And thank you.
because they should never have been court-martialed in some cases and convicted of mutiny in other cases. But it does provide some measure of closure for the families and the descendants of those men, and that is so important for us as well. You know, it's the only amount of justice that can be delivered 80 years after the fact. And so to have the Secretary of the Navy make that announcement, we've all just been smiling. A lot more than we normally do with such a solemn anniversary. We are both still honoring the dead and elated that those men's names have finally been cleared. And what that means for their families, we do not understand.
What was that moment like when you first heard it? Because I know I was Googling it, and then it said some of the exoneration. I said, no, that can't be true.
Well, we knew that the Secretary of the Navy was coming to today's event. We were hoping that he was coming with news that we wanted to hear, but the Navy did not share any plans with us ahead of time, and so we were afraid to hope. We were trying not to get our hopes up too much. And then when that Washington Post article dropped on Wednesday morning, I was in tears. I was overcome with emotion because of what it means, because of what it meant for the families, what it means for those families, and what it meant for the story, and for a large institution like the Navy to step up and do that is not something that you see happen.
I'd like to ask the media that has the microphone on the
everything that we have, all the work that we've been doing for so many years.
Some people will come up and want to read.
And that work is not done.
This
is a National Park Service site. This is a place where
folks are going to come and hear this story
for generations. And we will keep telling it. And we will keep talking about justices and injustices that go unaddressed for many, many years.
It has to be a special day for you, you know, with all the activities going on. And I've seen you in a lot of videos, documentaries. It has to be a special day because of that moment that happened 3 days ago.
It is. We're all living on adrenaline because on the one hand we have work to do. We have this event to put on, but we are thrilled. Many of us were in tears on Wednesday. We had already planned. Some of us had already planned to come out to the site after hours on Wednesday to mark the 80th anniversary, and that was just such a special moment with some park staff past and present, with board members from the Friends of Port Chicago National Memorial, just reveling in the fact that it's been 80 years and at last these men's names have been cleared.
Well, I do want to thank you for all the work that you've been doing with the National Park Service and being here on this special day. Like you said, there is still a lot of work to do. A lot of people are unknown about this part of Black history.
This is a little known story, but it is such a critical one because of the fact that it was a catalyst for the entire desegregation of the American military.
Thanks for mentioning that part. I almost forgot about that part with Thurgood Marshall behind the scenes, even though they didn't win the case, but he was instrumental.
He did not win the appeal, but he got the sentences reduced. He got some benefits restored. He was able to make those men's lives better, even though the appeal was not successful, because they were not about to. The racial discrimination that was going on was not a winning argument in 1944.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome.
Enjoy your day.
You are very welcome. It's very nice to meet you.
Antonio Harvey. My pleasure.
I wanted to say hello. This is Ray Hackett.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
Yes.
I saw your name on the list. I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, thank you. And your name has been on my lips for the last 5 years. You gave me that flag, and I tell you, I have talked about you, watched your video. It's just been so wonderful. It's going to be here today. Not knowing when I signed up that the announcement was.
We didn't know either.
They didn't tell us. Well, I thought, oh my God, right. And I came thinking, because it was on a minute's notice that, okay, you got to get your tank, you got to get your air, and on a minute's notice, I said, I've got to go. I don't know how many more beings I'm going to get on it. And it's Chicago Air. Yes.
I'm so happy. I know this gentleman's been trying to interview me, but I just want to say I'll be right there. This is an unusual event. It is solemn.
2, 2, 2. Yeah, hey, hi.